Hello and welcome to another video from the only channel you need to not only survive the current apocalypse but actually enjoy it. And today's video is going to be about the Curse of Cain. And the reason this came up is, it's normally these videos that I just throw together like this without a script are pretty much suggested by my viewers. I had 3 separate people ask me questions that don't seem to be tied in, but they actually are. And I just kind of took it as a sign that it'd be a good idea to talk about this. Now, I haven't talked about the Curse of Cain in the past because as a Bible reader, I read the Bible. I don't read individual scriptures. And you really, in order to believe church doctrines, you pretty much have to focus in on 1 or 2 verses or 3 or 4 verses. And if you try to put that together with the entire Bible, then your doctrine will fall apart. But I don't do that, so I don't have an issue with it. To me, these little side issues a lot of times are just background noise, so I don't let them concern me. And I also figured that if you watch all of my videos, eventually you'll get this discernment where when you come across a doctrine, it'll just automatically seem, not unimportant. But in any case, we'll start off by talking about a scripture. I had another viewer that sent me a message asking me about a word. He was doing some research about food, and it was actually on one of my Bible food videos. I think that it was actually the video called Bible Food. And he asked me about this word, Strong's number, and he gave me the number, and I looked it up, and it was a word that means eating. And it was very obvious that it meant eating. But I didn't want to say anything until I confirmed it. So I opened up my Strong's Concordance, online, and I went to the Vine's Expository Dictionary of New Testament Words online, and the Lexicon, and the Parallel Bibles. And I made sure before I said anything that this word was for a certainty eating. And the word is like a 2-syllable or 3-syllable word. Starts off with brodius, or something of that nature. And there's actually 3 words that are very similar to that. One means eat, eating, ate. The other one means eatable, and the other one means food, which is the thing that you would eat. And it's very obvious that that's what it means. That's all it can mean, and it applies to animals as well as humans. So you never see words about eating having to do with metal. And I think that the reason that the man was having an issue with this word is because one of the scriptures that uses this word said, "Do not store up treasures for yourself where moth and rust consume, but store up treasures for yourself in heaven where moth and rust do not consume." And so I had to determine if this word could be applied to metal. Rust eats away metal. And no matter where I went, I could not find anything that would allow for that kind of a definition of this word. But when I looked at the scripture, substituting the word eating didn't really make sense. Do not store up treasures that a moth would eat. So I looked at that word treasure, and the word treasure actually is not treasure. It's in there twice. It's like do not store up stores. So that word appears twice. Do not store up stores. So it's basically saying do not set aside the things you need on earth where moth and eating consume, but store up things for yourself that you need in heaven where moth and eating do not consume. And so that didn't make sense either. But I had a feeling that I knew where this was going, so I looked up several of the other words, and what I finally was able to conclude, and this goes along with it, every occurrence of the word eating, every occurrence of the word treasure, every occurrence of the word and, every occurrence of all of those words, it works. And it simply says, do not store up for yourselves the things that you need, which will be consumed or damaged by the natural eating process of a moth. But store up stuff for yourself in heaven where they will not be damaged by the natural eating processes of a moth. Now, I guess, whenever I see a scripture that's really, really twisted, where somebody has obviously put a whole lot of effort into changing the meaning, then I think, what are they hiding from me? And it's just the basics. It's the basics about natural law. That if we leave everything alone, don't engage in any unnatural acts, that the moth will benefit us. But if we attempt to do things outside of those parameters, then the activities of a moth do not benefit us. That's why we have bug spray. You know, why in the world would God make a moth? It's just going to get into our closet and eat our clothes. If you go back to the very beginning when God said, look, everything is very good. He was satisfied with things back then, and a moth wouldn't cause problems because people weren't wearing clothes. I'm not one of them emotion preachers, so I probably should stop. But that all still relates back to Cain and his curse. And once again, this is going to be a translation issue, but it really isn't. The scripture, if you go look at it, it says something like Cain killed his brother, and the blood of his brother was crying out, and the ground was drinking the blood of his brother. And so it says that cursed is the ground on account of Cain. Now, in our English, on TV shows and such, we see things like gypsies and witches casting spells or cursing people. And so we automatically see this word curse in our English language, and we think, God made a curse. Now, I've been in churches that had a teaching about this particular group of scriptures. And there are people that say that Cain was cursed, and because of it, we are also cursed, similar to the curse against Adam and Eve. You know, Adam and Eve sinned, and we feel the effects of that sin. So Cain committed another sin, and now we feel the effects of that sin. So to this day, our agricultural projects don't work right because Cain, has made the earth. God has caused the earth to no longer provide for us the way it would have if Cain hadn't killed his brother. But that's not what this says. The word curse in the original Hebrew simply means hinder or damage or cause problems. It's the same thing as the word bless. A blessing doesn't mean I'll give you magic powers or you will be able to do things that other people can't do. Blessing is always associated with doing something to benefit somebody. So there are scriptures that say, I will bless those that bless you, and I will curse those that curse you. So if we really think this is some kind of a magic trick or something that only God can do, then why is it that God will curse humans that curse us? Do those humans have magic powers? No, it was simply saying that if they do something bad to you, I will do something bad to them. If they do something good for you, I will do something good for them. This isn't a curse like when Cain is walking along and he puts a seed in the ground says, wait, don't make that seed grow. That person is Cain. Or thousands of years later, I do believe that person is the great grandson of Cain. Don't let his stuff grow. It's not like that. Now, back when I used to be a Jehovah's Witness, their teaching was that after the flood, the curse was lifted because there's a group of scriptures that say that call the ground that God cursed after the flood. And it says that God promised never to curse the ground again. Uses the same word that we use to talk about that curse of Cain. Well, that's not the same curse. When it says that, here's what it specifically says. Cursed is the ground on account of Cain. It does not say cursed is the ground on account of Jehovah. Jehovah's the one doing the saying. And grammatically in the original Hebrew, this cannot be twisted to mean that God cursed the ground on account of Cain. It specifically says the ground is cursed by Cain. So we can look at what Cain was doing and see what did Cain do that could have cursed the ground? How could he have possibly affected the ground? Well, there's not a whole lot written about what Cain did, but for that time period, there's really a lot because not many people had as much written about him as Cain did. 3 things that it says he did. First off, he tried to get Jehovah's blessing using agricultural products, and Jehovah would not accept that. So Cain was engaged in agriculture. It specifically said that he was engaged in that. Then, when his brother Abel's sacrifice was accepted, Cain killed his brother, so he committed murder. That's another thing that he did that's recorded in the Bible. And then the very next thing it says is that Cain went on to build cities. So, living in the 21st century, we're familiar with natural law, but we're more or less constricted by man-made laws, paper laws, what's called covenant law. And so we think of the law as covenant law. You know, don't drive over a certain speed limit. If you want to stay in your house, give us money every year for property taxes. There's just a volume after volume after volume of covenant law that we're under. But Cain and Abel weren't under that. They were under the same laws that were given to Adam and Eve, their parents. So those laws were eat food, drink water, get plenty of rest, don't eat this one particular fruit, and take care of the forest. And that really is in there. It specifically says that humans were put into the forest, and if I can remember the way King James says it, I can't remember what it says, but it's the words that are said is that they were to maintain the forest, just to manage it and protect it. So when Cain engaged in agricultural activities, he was breaking God's natural law, because it's not like there was an agricultural field somewhere that God had created and Cain was maintaining that. In order for Cain to engage in agriculture, he had to destroy some other kind of ecosystem that was a natural ecosystem to initiate his unnatural ecosystem. When he killed his brother, you know, the ground was made to digest the things that fall, like we were talking about the moth. The moth consumes these things, but there was never supposed to be human bodies laying around to be consumed. There were processes in place that did take care of that, but that's not what they were designed for. And the third thing that Cain did was build a city. He built the very first city. So all three of those things were unnatural things that Cain did to the ground. So Jehovah looked down and said, Cain is cursing the ground. That's what it said in Hebrew. And the way we translate that into English is, cursed is the ground on account of Cain. Now, later in the book of Genesis, when the flood came along, it said that Jehovah had cursed the ground. Well, how did Jehovah curse the ground? He cursed the ground by flooding it. So here we start off, Cain's cursing the ground by doing his unnatural things, and then Jehovah comes along and curses the ground by doing something else that was unnatural. But you have to look at the bigger picture. Jehovah did that as somewhat of a stopgap measure. And we don't know all the details, but we know that the world was spiraling out of control because of the demons that were ruling back then. And obviously we wake up every day to a world that's spiraling out of control again. But that flood did stop it. It slowed it down for a long time, because prior to the flood we see a lot of stories about, and not just in the Bible, but a lot of stories in secular history about these demons and demigods, half demon, half humans, just absolutely destroying the planet. And obviously there's still something going on, but they're can't possibly be as powerful as they used to be. I mean, they took a handful of people and built the pyramids. So, you know, whatever was going on back then, God stopped it, but he had to perform something unnatural. He had to damage or curse the ground in order to do it, but he was willing to, in order to save us. So later when it says, I shall not curse the ground the same way again, well, he couldn't, because the waters from the flood came from what's called the Sea of Glass above the earth, or the waters above the expanse, also known as the sky window, or the floodgates of the heavens. And without that up there, there was no way that he could flood the earth again, because all the flood waters were still here, and they're still here today. So there's not really a curse, whereas like people look at the politicians that rule the world, the political leaders everywhere, the religious leaders, the economic leaders, and these people seem to be absolutely insane. And it is possible that they are demon-possessed by the same demons that were controlling Cain back then and causing him to do these unthinkable acts. But it doesn't mean that Cain's DNA allows for that, and that no other human can be demon-possessed, or someone who's not the offspring of Cain can't do bad things. We all do bad things. The Bible specifically says that all men sin and all men fall short of the glory of God, and a lot of those sins are really, really serious. But basically, the way what I'm saying is that this all ties in. If we do things that are unnatural, then it's going to harm or curse the ground. And we shouldn't put a lot of our dependence on unnatural systems to get us through, but to look forward to the day when God reestablishes his natural systems. Curse of Cain. It's not really a curse at all. At least it doesn't involve magic. If you don't want to survive, don't listen to me.